We are in Suez, heading towards the Sinai Peninsula, between the Gulf of Suez and the Red Sea, the Asian part of Egypt. We are crossing the Suez Canal underwater through the tunnel built by the Japanese. Initially, we follow the seashore, which is barren, but apparently rich in oil. And soon we see the mountains, because we are heading towards the tallest of all, Mount Sinai. The only life between the rocks and sand is the acacia tree, which was casting shadow to the prophets. Its roots go deep 22 meters, and they signal water. And indeed, we soon encounter an oasis, one of the spots where the Israelis set up base when they temporarily conquered Sinai. The mountains are made of red granite, with streaks of black marble, which run like the Great Chinese Wall. In the next 8 days, we were overwhelmed by how much red granite we've seen. We are accommodated at noon, but we have no time to spare, because we are heading towards the peak of Mount Sinai, where we plan to admire the sunset at the spot where Prophet Moses received the Ten Commandments. We pass by the St. Catherine Monastery, the site of the burning bush, which is an international protectorate and holy to both Christians and Muslims, because they both share the same Old Testament. We do this pilgrimage and climb in full sunshine, resisting the tempting invitation of help from the part of the camel rider. Moses, who was contemporary, it seems, with either Hatshepsut or Ramses II, climbed this path after having driven the Hebrews out of Egypt. He was 80, having spent 40 years with the Pharaoh and 40 years as a shepherd. We maybe underestimated the height we have to reach in that heat. This is just a rest point, commercialized, of course. The rounded shapes of the rocks give really a biblical atmosphere, like in those Renaissance paintings. The last portion involved steps. The area was very clean, very well kept. We've hardly seen any graffiti from the visitors, except these ones. We are at the height of the mountains at the horizon. In the valley is the depression in which Moses' followers allegedly quickly forgot the true faith for the golden calf idol. But soon we reach the chapel on the peak. At over 2,000 meters of altitude, it is getting cool. This is the spot where we plan to take farewell to the sun. and we return to the base by night. We are approaching St. Catherine's Monastery of Sinai, located on the site of the biblical burning bush. The site was discovered by Helena, mother of King Constantine I of Byzance, both saints, around the 300s. The current monastery was built by another saint, King Justinian, in the 700s. Caterina was a Christian martyr in Alexandria. The angels flew her pieces here and they were discovered by monks who put them together much like Osiris. And the monastery became a site of pilgrimage. Mohammed offered the Muslim protection to this site in this document in which we see the shape of his hand as signature. And these stairs lead towards an old mosque within the walls of the monastery, which was never used because it was not properly oriented towards Mecca. The oldest part is the chapel of the burning bush, this one. And this is supposedly the bush itself, a very special species indeed. Next to it is the Greek Orthodox Church. Which has inside a fine mosaic, as well as the relics of St. Catherine. The library has a valuable collection of old icons, such as this one from the 6th century, as well as manuscripts and print. Some of the richest donations are the books from the Romanian voivodes Basarab and Movila. And this completes our visit to Mount Sinai. We board the bus and we head towards the seashore resort Nuveiba. The resort was not very well tuned. The running water was salty. Still, we enjoyed a couple of snorkeling adventures to see corals and fish, and we spent an evening in a shop. Before noon, we head toward the busy port and take farewell from the Egyptian guide, and then wait for hours and hours for the ferry. The next portion of the trip was by ferry, bypassing the coast of Israel, heading towards the tip of the Red Sea, the port of Aqaba. We may have heard of Aqaba from the movie Lawrence of Arabia, so beautifully acted by Peter O'Toole. Lawrence, a sergeant in the English army, helped the Arabs during the First World War to revolt against the Ottomans. In the First World War, the Germans and Ottomans were on one side, English and French were with the Arabs on the other side. The Ottoman guns were defending Aqaba facing the sea. Lawrence and the Arabs crossed the desert and conquered Aqaba from the back. It is partly thanks to Lawrence that the Arab nations did not become English or French colonies. We watch the sunset on the Red Sea, and we understand that it's called red because of the reflections from the red granite mountains. At the tip of the Red Sea, Israel, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia converge. And this is how we enter Jordan, through Aqaba, in a land full of remains significant to the Roman, Christian, and Muslim history. From the hotel room, we examine the shore. First it's Israel with Elat. Then it's Jordan with Aqaba. And on the right hand side we end up in Saudi Arabia. We are leaving Aqaba for the desert. We are doubled by a train carrying phosphates, a major deposit in Jordan, using the narrow gauge rail built by the Ottomans, narrow for strategic purposes. Jordan does not have oil, or it is not allowed to look for it. Still, gasoline is half price compared to America. What we see on the sides are tips of mountains which were sunk together with the Dead Sea and then filled with debris, becoming a flat desert. They have camel races on this plain. The Beduins, the inhabitants of the desert, are the true Arabs, occupying the same land from the early biblical times. They drove camels in caravans and rode horses, but the main occupation is growing the black goat, from the wool of which they knit both tents and clothes. These have the property that in summer the thread allows the air to pass, but when wet the thread swells and the fabric becomes impermeable. With this introduction, we arrive to the Bedouin camp of Wadi Ram, the valley of Ram. We step on the fine red sand and discover on the right hand side the area where we are going to be accommodated in Bedouin tents with partitions. At the base of a huge rock there is a common room protected by curtains against the sandstorms. We don't waste time and start to explore the area. The area is very well developed touristically. We see several camps like ours. Here we assist to a sunset at the gates of the Arabian desert. And this is the return of our party to the camp, where we assist to a feast in Bedouin style. To prepare dinner, a fire is set in a deep hole in the sand. A multi-layered tray with potatoes and meat is lowered to the ash and covered well with a carpet and sand so that it only takes the heat, not the flames. The juices from the meats on the top fall on the potatoes at the bottom. And this is our dinner. That night we admired a magnificent starry sky. The following morning we did a very enjoyable trip in jeeps into the desert. Which started as a race to show the skills of the drivers. The day when it rained in Aswan, it also rained in the desert, which is rare in summer. Occasionally it rains in February. A spot flood can raise the level of water by 1 or 2 meters above the sand in an instant.